G'day my friends. In today's video we're talking about, is it really cheap to start a veggie garden? Now I know lots of you have got different thoughts on this because it depends on how you start and get going in your veggie garden. For everyone it's different, but I'm starting what I call a victory garden behind you. Well, not actually a victory garden. What we're doing is we're building, this is a beautiful garden, we're building a cost of living victory garden, and I'm changing the name behind, and I'm doing it as cheaply as possible using what I've got around the house and a few purchases here and there to help you guys with your gardening. Now, I know lots of you are going to be arguing and going off in the comments about this, and I reckon you should, because there's going to be so much to share. So it's not cheap, it is cheap, you can do it this way, you can save lots of money. Well, it really depends on how you go about it, guys, because there's some products out there that are super expensive. Not everyone can make their own DIY stuff, and there are so many options on the internet. It just gets downright confusing, right? And then you just go, it's just too hard, I'm just going to go buy my stuff. Well, hats off to you if you can, because at the moment it's getting so expensive here in Australia and other parts around the world that we have to actually start looking at it so we don't go hungry. People are skipping meals in Australia just to pay their bills, and that's the truth of it all. We've got this housing crisis. The government just suck at the moment. They haven't been doing anything. I've known about the housing crisis for over 10 years now, and it's only just coming up in the media recently, really, like pushed more and more and more because people want to hear about it and people are hurting. So how do we save our pennies on the dollar? Start gardening. And as I said, it's going to be controversial in this space today. And I want to share and hear your tips and tricks and thoughts. But before you go on off on a big rant, hear what I've got to say, because there are some ways to save money doing it. And you don't have to explode out buying garden beds and all this stuff. Now, this product here, it's a cow manure blend. Right, I bought this from Bunnings. Now I'm sure you could get this all around other places. It's probably not the greatest stuff, but it's got cow manure in it. It's cheap. It's only about $5 a bag, 25 litres. It does work. Then we've got our cheap compost here. Again, I think it's about $4.50, close to $5 a bag. Now, when you add that together with some blood and bone and potash, because you can buy blood and bone and potash together in one bag, and mix it through, you end up with an okay mix. Now I'll just show you, I've got a little eggplant here, growing here in one of those mixes as we speak. Now, it's not as good as my blends, right? It hasn't got worm castings and hasn't got all the living biology in it, but it will pick up nutrients and it will grow. And then you're supposed to, over time, feed the compost on top once you're composting or get liquid from your worm farms, things like that. You need to liquid feed these guys, because the problem is there's a lot of carbon in this material, which I'll show you here. Now, the carbon needs nitrogen to be broken down, right? So being fibrous like that means it's pretty good in pots. It means it's got a blocky structure. The roots will be able to move through it. But when the roots move through it, they need to be able to find nutrient, right? When the water hits it, the nutrient then dissolves and breaks up into the plant's roots, and then it gets fed. So that's one way to do it. Now, people have said they found plastic and all types of stuff, and I went right through it. I sifted it. I haven't found anything nasty in there at all. But as I said, if you live close and you're local, you're better off probably buying my compost. It's cheap compared to what you're going to have with this. But it is a solution. Not everyone can come to Marty's garden, right, and pick something up. Now, we've got things growing in foam boxes behind. We've got things growing in recycled pots. And here is a bale garden at the back. Now everyone's thinking, I don't have bales. What am I going to do? You know, what I'm doing is I'm actually building a garden on site that will keep on growing and keep on producing food, because you can just throw carbon down, right? Like, just think of it like a no-dig system, cardboard, start throwing mulch and wood chip and different things like that, start breaking it down, just put pots on top. You see, the pots on top, every time we water it down below, now when it's really dry, we need to put trays underneath, but we just water it and the water goes through the carbon, eventually into the ground. The worms, the fungi and everything start coming up through over time, and then things really start sort of exploding. Now, foam boxes, I know we should really be steering in other directions and chasing down recycled, hard, really good plastic pots. Right now, you can get them from the recycle centre. I was just up there in Byron. There's like big piles of them. They're dirt cheap. If you've got somewhere around like that, like a local tip that has a recycled centre, or say Facebook Marketplace, things like that, just throwing them out. Do what you can to get those. Get the biggest ones you can, because they dry out less quickly, and get a whole lot of small ones as well, and start growing with seed. I've bought seedlings because I really want to get things going quickly here. But start growing with seed and you'll have more success. But if you need food fast, get a couple of little punnets, right? Cheap ones around that $4, $3.50. Start potting them up. Start getting some food in quick, because then what's happening is we're getting excited. We're starting to harvest. We're thinking, yes, 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 yes. Now, in behind here, what I've got a hollow in there, inside here. So I can fill that up with compost and start growing potatoes or sweet potato or whatever out. And around the outside, I've got these sort of pots, right? And the pots will be big pots, and I'll have tomatoes and things running up and up over these trellises. And I'll leave it open and exposed at the bottom of the pot so the water goes down through. And eventually a pot will sit on top of the bale. It'll be watering down into the system, getting it all nice and wet and humusy, and I'll start putting compost on top of the bale, and the roots will move down through, like in the tomato example, move down through the pot and start moving into the bale. And then we've got this system of this plant going down through and grabbing all that sort of humusy stuff. It'll be start connecting to any microbes and different things down there, start connecting to the fungi, and then we have movement, right? And so in a small space, we need to build a trellis really quickly. Now, I've got a link here somewhere around for this trellis build, and you'll find it there, and I'll also leave it down in the description down below so you can watch how I built this thing with little connectors. Really cheap way to build a vertical space, because you only got a small space, I guess, most of you, and you want to do this. Now, if you've got a bigger space, I also suggest, if you're new, you compress it in and start in a small area, then expand out to what you can do. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this tomato plant around here. I'm going to show you how well it's doing growing in that medium that I talked about, the compost. So it's growing in compost, cow manure, and a blood and bone. Now, we had the big storms. Oh, it was raining hard, man. And we had a couple 100 mil, and then it rained again last night, another 40 mil. And so this thing is wet, man. And it gets a little bit of shade here in this spot, but as the summer comes on, it gets more and more sun in here. Now, this is a Tommy Toe, and it's just growing in that mix that I just shown you before. Cow, the compost, and some blood and bone and potash. Now, the potash helps with the flowering, and I will be liquid feeding this guy. I need to, because the fact is that it's going to be stealing some of the nitrogen. Nitrogen is needed to break down the material inside. So if you've got a fish emulsion / seaweed, use that, guys, or a worm farm juice combination. Now, look at this lettuce that's growing in that material that I spoke about. Now, that is harvestable, ready to go. And we probably will harvest some of this today. It's growing in a foam box. And I said, I don't really push foam boxes, but it's cheap. And you can get really strong cardboard boxes. You can get recycled plastic containers around the place, and just use whatever you can. Just try your very best to keep the plastics out of the soil and microplastics and things like that. Anyway, listen, keep watching the series, because this is going to be really cool as we build out. Oh, I'm getting a bit tired, they were heavy. I really want to hear your thoughts about the costs of living and building a veggie garden. Is it expensive? Do you think it's cost effective? Can you do it cheaply? Share down below, because there's going to be lots of people watching this. If you've come to the end of the video, let me know also, because in the comments box below this video, It's going to be some awesome content in there. People are sharing some amazing stuff, their tips and tricks, all through my videos. Love you guys. Thanks so much for coming. You guys are awesome. I'm going to take off my Aussie Gardener gloves. Aussie Gardener links down below also, 10% off if you just use the code word. That's down there, and you can get lots of cool stuff there too. Save a bit of money that way. All right, here we go. Fish emulsion and seaweed is what you need to water these pots. And a bit of worm juice. Bye for now.